when she saw Daniel hesitate at the entrance instead of walking in like he always did. He was tall for his age, shoulders slightly hunched, his jacket damp from the cold Oregon evening. Usually, he greeted her with an easy smile and a quick joke about Noah stealing all the snacks, but tonight there was no smile, no joke, only a quiet nod. Emily felt a small tightening in her chest, the kind that came when instinct told her something was wrong even before the mind caught up. She invited him in with a soft voice, and Daniel stepped into the living room, moving slowly, like someone afraid of making noise. The house was warm, filled with the familiar smell of coffee and clean laundry, yet Daniel chose the far end of the couch, sitting straight with his hands folded tightly together, eyes fixed on the floor. The sound of rain tapping against the windows filled the silence, steady and gentle, but it did nothing to ease the tension in the room. Emily sat across from him, giving him space, studying his face without staring. His jaw was tight, his breathing shallow, as if he was holding something back. She had known Daniel for years, watched him grow from a shy middle school boy into a thoughtful young man, and she had never seen him like this. Upstairs, Noah's voice echoed faintly as he talked on the phone, completely unaware that his friend downstairs looked like he was carrying the weight of the world. Emily offered Daniel tea, more out of habit than need, and he nodded without lifting his eyes. She placed the mug on the table between them, watching the steam rise and fade. Minutes passed, but Daniel didn't touch it. The silence grew heavier, not uncomfortable but meaningful, the kind of silence that asks for honesty. Emily didn't rush him. Life had taught her that some people needed time to find their words. Her own life had been shaped by moments where everything changed quietly, without warning. When her husband passed years ago, it wasn't a loud moment, it was a phone call, a pause, a before and after. She sensed that Daniel was standing at a similar edge now, even if the reason was different. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm and steady, asking if he was okay. Daniel's head lifted just slightly, their eyes meeting for a brief second. In that glance, Emily saw something raw, fear, sadness, and a deep loneliness that didn't belong to someone so young. His lips parted as if he wanted to speak, but no sound came out. He looked away again, swallowing hard. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost fragile, saying only that he needed to be there. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that settled heavily in Emily's chest. She nodded, letting him know that was enough, that he didn't need to explain himself yet. Outside, the rain grew steadier, and the sky darkened as evening crept in. Daniel shifted slightly on the couch, his knee bouncing once before he forced it still. Emily noticed everything, the way he avoided eye contact, the way his fingers pressed into his palms, the way his shoulders tensed whenever the house made a sound. She realized this visit had nothing to do with Noah's homework, or a late-night movie like so many before. This was something else, something personal. She felt a quiet responsibility settle over her, not as Noah's mother, but as an adult who understood how fragile moments like this could be. The room felt smaller, closer, as if the world outside had faded away, leaving just the two of them and the unspoken truth hanging in the air. Emily didn't know what Daniel was about to say, but she knew it mattered. She sensed that once he found the courage to speak fully, it would leave a mark on both of them, not dramatic or loud, but deep and lasting. The rain continued to fall. The house held its breath, and Daniel sat quietly, gathering the courage to change everything with a few simple words. The tea sat untouched between them as time moved forward without either of them noticing, and the quiet in the room felt heavier than before, not empty but full of thoughts waiting to break free. Emily stayed where she was, calm and patient, watching Daniel breathe as if each breath took effort. The rain outside softened, turning into a steady background sound, while the house remained still except for the faint noise from upstairs, where Noah moved around, unaware of what was unfolding below. Daniel finally lifted his head, his eyes tired and honest, and when he spoke, his voice shook just enough to show how hard this was for him. He said his mother had left a week ago, not after an argument or a goodbye, but quietly, with boxes packed and a short note left behind, and the way he said it made it clear the shock had not faded. Emily felt the words hit her chest, but she kept her face gentle, letting him speak without interruption. Daniel explained how the house felt empty now, how silence followed him from room to room, how he kept expecting to hear his mother's voice calling his name only to be reminded she was gone. He said he hadn't cried in front of anyone, not his father, not Noah, not even himself, because he didn't know how to explain the mix of anger and sadness without feeling weak. His words came faster now, like a dam breaking, and Emily could hear the relief in his voice as he finally let the truth out. He admitted that tonight he couldn't stay alone, that the walls at home felt too close, and the quiet too loud, so he came to the one place that had always felt steady. Emily leaned forward slightly, her attention fully on him, her expression open and warm. She told him she was sorry, not with pity, but with understanding, and those simple words seemed to ease something in him. Daniel nodded, his eyes shining but not spilling over, and said that pretending everything was fine had become exhausting, like wearing a mask that grew heavier each day. He talked about school, about laughing with friends while feeling empty inside, about how people expected him to be okay because he was young, as if pain followed rules and timelines. Emily listened closely, recognizing that kind of loneliness, the kind that made you feel invisible even in a room full of people. Without thinking too much, she moved her hand closer to his on the table, not touching, but near enough to offer comfort without crossing a line. Daniel noticed, and his shoulders relaxed just a little. He looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment the age difference faded, replaced by a shared human sadness. He told her that being in her house always felt calm, that even before everything fell apart at home, he had noticed how safe it felt here, how different it was from the constant tension he was used to. Emily felt a quiet ache at his words, realizing how much he had been carrying without anyone noticing. She thought about her own life, about the nights after her husband died, when she sat alone, wishing someone would simply listen without trying to fix her. She understood now that Daniel didn't need advice or solutions, he needed to be heard. When she told him he didn't have to be strong all the time, his breath caught, and he looked away quickly, embarrassed by how close he felt to breaking. The moment stretched, fragile but sincere, filled with unspoken trust. Upstairs, a door closed softly, reminding them of the world beyond the room, but neither rushed to move. Daniel wiped his face with the back of his hand, steadying himself, and said he hadn't planned to say any of this, but once he started, it felt impossible to stop. Emily gave him a small, reassuring smile, letting him know he was doing nothing wrong. The connection between them deepened, not in a dramatic way, but quietly, built on shared understanding and respect. There was no confusion, no crossed lines, only two people meeting at a moment of honesty. As Daniel finished speaking, the room felt lighter, as if something heavy had been set down at last. Emily realized that this conversation, simple as it seemed, would stay with her for a long time, because it revealed how close pain and trust could sit side by side. Daniel sat back slightly, exhausted but calmer, and for the first time that evening, he reached for the tea, taking a small sip as if grounding himself in the present. The rain outside slowed even more, and the house felt warmer, holding the quiet promise that sometimes, being heard was enough to begin healing. Daniel sat still for a moment after the last words left his mouth, as if he was surprised by his own honesty, and Emily could see the effort it took for him to stay composed. The room felt quieter now, not heavy like before, but delicate, as if a single wrong word could disturb the balance they had reached. Daniel took a deep breath, and said there was something else he had been holding inside, something he had not even admitted to himself until recently. Emily did not interrupt, she only nodded slightly, encouraging him to continue. He said that during the hardest moments at home, when arguments filled the air or silence felt sharp, he had noticed how different her house felt, how calm her voice was, how steady everything seemed. He explained that it was not just the place, but her presence that made it feel safe, like things made sense for a while when he was there. Emily felt her heart tighten, not from fear, but from the weight of being seen in a way she had not expected. Daniel spoke faster now, worried his words might sound wrong if he slowed down, explaining that he did not mean anything inappropriate, only that he admired her strength, her kindness, and the way she listened without judgment. He said that when his own world felt unstable, she became a symbol of everything he wished life could be: quiet, caring, and steady. Emily listened carefully, aware of the fine line between comfort and confusion, and she chose her responses with care. She told him that feeling drawn to kindness was natural, especially when life had been unkind elsewhere, and that there was nothing wrong with appreciating someone who made you feel safe. Daniel's shoulders eased at her words, relief clear on his face, as if he had feared being misunderstood or pushed away. He admitted that he had been afraid to say anything because he respected her and Noah too much to cause discomfort, but keeping it inside had started to feel heavier than saying it out loud. Emily appreciated his honesty and maturity, recognizing how much courage it took for someone his age to speak so thoughtfully. She shared, gently and briefly, that after losing her husband, she had also learned how powerful simple presence could be, how sometimes people were drawn together not by romance, but by shared loneliness and understanding. Daniel listened closely, absorbing her words, and for the first time that night, a small, genuine smile appeared on his face. The moment between them felt human and sincere, not dramatic, built on trust rather than desire. Emily made sure to keep her tone warm but clear, reinforcing that while she cared about his feelings and his well-being, certain boundaries mattered, and respecting them was part of caring deeply. Daniel nodded immediately, grateful rather than embarrassed, and said he understood completely, that being able to say the truth without losing her respect meant more than anything else. The sound of Noah moving upstairs floated down the hallway, grounding the moment in reality, and reminding them both of the world they shared beyond this conversation. Daniel wiped his eyes, not in shame, but in release, as if a long-held tension had finally eased. Emily offered him reassurance, telling him that he was not alone, that feeling lost did not mean he was weak, and that asking for support was a strength. The connection between them settled into something calm and respectful, no longer charged with uncertainty, but shaped by mutual understanding. Daniel leaned back slightly, looking lighter than when he arrived, and said he felt clearer now, as if speaking the truth had helped him find his footing again. Emily felt a quiet sense of purpose, knowing that sometimes the most meaningful moments were not loud or romantic, but honest and grounding. As the conversation slowed, the room returned to a peaceful stillness, not because there was nothing left to say, but because what needed to be said had already been spoken. Both of them understood that this moment would stay with them, not as a secret or a mistake, but as a reminder of how careful listening and kindness could guide someone through a difficult turning point. Noah's voice suddenly carried down the stairs, casual and unaware, breaking the quiet spell and reminding both Emily and Daniel that the world had never paused for their conversation, it had only softened around it. Daniel straightened at once, the openness on his face settling back into a calm, respectful expression, not distant but composed, as if he had gathered himself after a long walk through difficult thoughts. Emily stood slowly, not rushed, giving the moment a natural close rather than an abrupt end, and she felt a mix of relief and tenderness knowing the line between care and confusion had been honored. Noah came into the living room smiling, talking about something ordinary, and Daniel listened politely, nodding, answering when spoken to. But there was a quiet change in him, subtle yet clear, like someone who had put down a heavy bag he had been carrying too long. After a few minutes, Daniel glanced at the clock and said he should head home, his voice steady, his tone respectful, and Emily knew the choice came not from discomfort, but from clarity. She walked him to the door as the night air cooled the house, the rain now gone, leaving the street calm and reflective under the street lights. At the doorway, Daniel paused and thanked her again, not with many words, but with sincerity that stayed in the space between them. Emily smiled and told him he was always welcome, not as an escape, but as a place where honesty was safe. He nodded, understanding the meaning beneath her words, and stepped outside, walking down the path with a posture that felt lighter than when he arrived. Emily watched until he reached the sidewalk, then gently closed the door, leaning against it for a brief moment, letting the quiet return. Upstairs, Noah moved about, unaware that anything meaningful had happened, and Emily felt comfort in that normalcy, knowing life did not need to change shape for something important to have occurred. She returned to the living room, noticing the untouched teacup, now cold, a small sign of how much time had passed without feeling like it had. Sitting down, she reflected on how some moments did not announce themselves as turning points, but revealed their importance only after they were over. She thought about Daniel walking home, about his mother, about the strength it took for him to speak, and about the responsibility of listening without taking more than was offered. Emily knew the connection they shared was not meant to grow into something else, but it did not need to, because its value lay in honesty and care, not in promise. That night, after the house grew quiet and Noah went to bed, Emily stood by the window, looking out at the still street, feeling a calm sadness mixed with gratitude. She understood that love existed in many forms, not all of them meant to be acted on, some meant only to be respected. Daniel, meanwhile, walked through the quiet neighborhood, hands in his pockets, breathing easier, feeling steadier with each step, knowing that speaking the truth had not broken anything, only strengthened his sense of self. He reached his house and went inside, not healed, but supported, not alone, but understood. And Emily, turning off the lights downstairs, carried the memory with her, not as a secret or regret, but as a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful moments are gentle ones, where nothing dramatic happens, yet everything important quietly settles into place.